dear listeners, and welcome back to another edition of A Win is a Win. I'm your host, as always, it hasn't changed. My name is Edgar Chaput. And I wasn't quite certain what I wanted to discuss with the second episode of the week. I try to knock out a couple of these per week. When I'm on it, 3, but at least 2. Really wasn't entirely certain. That is until I read an article. I found it on tsn.ca, but it's officially an ESPN article. It's written by Bill Barnwell, the title of which is Young's NFL Future, Trade Value, Options for Panthers. It's a very extensive read. It's a good read. It's not a short one. It's quite thorough. It's very good. And it inspired me to record a brief episode about Bryce Young, quarterback of the Carolina Panthers, at least for now, and the manner in which NFL franchises tend to prepare their young gunslingers, by young I mean rookies, and how that might have affected Bryce Young, pardon me, and what this situation says maybe about how things operate in the NFL. So let's discuss. So often there's a very good reason why ESPN published that article earlier today. I'm recording this on Thursday, September 19th. We're still a couple hours away from Thursday Night Football, so I don't know what's happened yet. And the reason being, the Carolina Panthers announced a day or two ago, I don't remember if it was on Wednesday or Tuesday, but they announced that for the time being, Andy Dalton will be, the Red Rocket, will be the starting quarterback for the Panthers. Now, he officially, at the start of the season, was listed as QB2 on the depth chart in Carolina for the Panthers. Bryce Young, they wanted to give it another go. Bryce Young, as I'm sure everyone listening to this knows, was the number 1 overall pick in 2023. In fact, the Panthers did some wheeling and dealing in the offseason with Chicago, if memory serves, to land that number 1 spot and therefore acquire Bryce Young. Of course, the Panthers were, well, to put it mildly, absolute trash in 2023. It was a bit of a disaster, and Bryce Young's numbers were not great. He only completed 59.8% of his passes, threw for just over 2,800 yards, had 11 touchdowns, but 10 picks, and that was in 16 games. Quarterback rating of 34.1. So not great numbers. The team was not very good. In fact, they have since changed head coaches, and they made some further offseason deals to try to spruce up the roster. But through 2 games, at the time of this recording, 2 weeks of the NFL are in the books. The Panthers lost both of their games. They were hammered in New Orleans by the Saints in Week 1, and then they came home for their home opener in Week 2 against the Los Angeles Chargers. So, 2 decent opponents to start the season, but they were smashed again. And Bryce Young, in 2 games, has 56 pass attempts, 31 completions for a 55.4% efficiency, 245 yards, an average of 4.4 yards per pass. That's no bueno. No TDs yet, already 3 picks, and a QBR, and this is not a typo, I'm squinting, a QBR of 9.1. He is, out of the quarterbacks who've, tussled in a couple of games so far, he is by far the worst quarterback. Again, not entirely his fault, but he is by far the worst quarterback in the NFL. There have been a lot of criticisms about some of this year's rookies, like Caleb Williams, Bo Nix. Well, Bo Nix still has a QBR of 51. Not great. In fact, it's actually pretty bad, but still. Caleb Williams, his is 53. Again, not good, but at least it's 53. 9.1 for Bryce Young. So now the conversation has evolved or devolved or transitioned to how long is are Bryce Young's days in Carolina numbered? Possibly. I wonder what the ramifications of trading Bryce Young in the offseason. There is a trade deadline in the NFL. We don't talk about it a lot. NBA and NHL and MLB trade deadlines seem to get a lot more headlines and transfer windows in European soccer. You don't tend to talk about the NFL trade deadline a whole lot, but it does exist. It would be quite something for Bryce Young to be traded away to another team. And what would you even get for Bryce Young? The Carolina Panthers have done absolutely nothing constructive to try to build a bright career for this young man. Now, I don't think he's entirely helped himself. His pass protection is not very good, that's true. The running game is the offensive line is just not very good at pass protecting or creating holes for running backs anyways. It's not like Chuba Hubbard is helping. Chuba Hubbard's not a bad back, but it's not as if he's helping. He can't really help. He can't do anything either. But, this is a big deal if the Panthers trade away Bryce Young. I don't even know if they should. I wonder if they should actually, A, play Andy Dalton. I think that's a good idea. B, sign someone from the practice squad or sign a journeyman. Who's watching football on their couch? Who is a known quantity in the league who's played some games, a quote, locker room veteran, end quote, but is maybe on a practice squad right now, or they're the backup somewhere, or they're fighting for the backup job. It's not even clear if they're the QB number 2, and sign that player and really just have Bryce Young watch and learn. Remember, in the summer of 2023, the franchise immediately bequeathed him the QB1 role on the depth chart, and that turned out to be a disaster. And this whole story made me think of, the timing of this is so funny, it made me think of an interview that happened quite recently. Stephen A. Smith, a very popular and highly regarded sports commentator, knows his football and basketball, maybe a little bit more than other sports, but he knows them so well. Doesn't really matter if that's mostly what he talks about. And he has his own show. He's an ESPN employee, and he's on one of their morning shows. You have to forgive me. There are only so many hours in a day and days in a week, and with other responsibilities. I'm not going to sit here on this podcast and pretend I know literally every single show on every single station. But he does have his own show, the Stephen A. Smith Show. And recently, in the summertime, he actually hosted a live version of his show in front of a live audience with guests. And one of his guests was Tom Brady. And this is about a month or two ago. I think it happened in August, or at least it was published in August. And it's funny, the timing of that interview, give or take a month before Bryce Young, 2023 number 1 overall draft pick, is benched. And, Bo Nix is struggling in Denver. Caleb Williams is struggling in Chicago. Jury's is still out on Anthony Richardson because he missed most of his first season, but he hasn't been great. It's been uneven so far in 2024. So a lot of young quarterbacks are struggling. They can't all be C.J. Stroud. Then again, I think C.J. Stroud was drafted into a very strong system with a really good head coach. Also helps that DeMeco Ryans is a defensive-minded head coach. So even if the offense had struggled, the defense probably would have done more than enough to carry its share of the load. But as it turns out, things are, they're rolling in Houston. But my point is, they can't all be C.J. Stroud, who is really pretty awesome. Rookie of the Year last year, if memory serves, in 2023. And Tom Brady, spoilers, smart guy, knows his football, knows his quarterbacking. He bemoaned the manner in which the state of the NFL, he didn't say he doesn't like the NFL, he loves the NFL, but he bemoaned the state of the NFL insofar as young quarterbacks are tossed into the lion's den almost immediately, like Bo Nix, like Caleb Williams, like CJ Stroud, like Anthony Richardson, Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson. All these guys, J.J. McCarthy was supposed to be the starter in Minnesota. He's not playing because he injured and he's out for the year, but he was supposed to be the starter. So, we'll never know what his 2024 would have been. We'll find out in 2025, but that was the plan for the Vikings in Minnesota with J.J. McCarthy. And Tom Brady, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but you can check it on YouTube, Stephen A. Smith, Tom Brady, and you should get it as a result in the search engine. And Tom Brady bemoaned the fact that there just doesn't seem to be a very good plan with a lot of these teams as to how to develop their young quarterbacks, their new draft selections, how to get them ready for the pros. Which makes me think of a comment on Sunday Night Football a few days ago, 4 days ago at the time of this recording. The Bears, we referenced Caleb Williams. The Bears were visiting the Texans, ironically. And I believe it was Chris Collinsworth who, with all due respect to Caleb Williams, because it was a tough night for the Bears. It was an especially tough night for the offense, and it was an especially tough night for Williams. And Chris Collinsworth said something to the effect, again, this is a few days ago, but something to the effect of, it's all fun and games when you are the fastest, biggest, and strongest athlete on the field, which was probably the case for Caleb Williams at university, or college, as the Americans say. It's a completely different ballgame, quite literally, at the professional level, when suddenly, after years of dominating the field, suddenly you're not even close to the fastest, biggest, strongest player on the field. It's a different ballgame. And Caleb Williams is a pretty big guy. Bryce Young, honestly, he looks a little lanky. He looks a little svelte. He probably should put on a little bit of extra muscle. He does need to work on a few things. Even last season, and from what I've seen of the Panthers' first 2 games this year, I personally don't like his stance. I find he looks like a stick in the pocket. He's very straight. His posture, his footwork, which when you're a quarterback, especially under duress in the pocket, being pressured, footwork and posture are key for the arm rotation, for the sling of the arm, the slingshot of the arm to launch the ball. Those things will be affected. They really, really will. That's why whenever these analysts, these experts, whether color commentators or pundits who have published articles or podcasts, anybody, that's why they're always talking about posture and footwork. What are the feet doing? What are the ankles doing? There's a reason why that's a big talking point when it comes to quarterback play. And Bryce Young looks like a stick out there. Some of the problems are on him, to be clear. It's not all on the Panthers, but the analysis this week, not just this week, last year, the offseason, after week 1 this year, a lot of the analysis has pointed the finger at the Carolina Panthers, where Bryce Young was simply not put in a good situation. And I think to that interview Tom Brady gave to Stephen A. Smith earlier this summer about there needs to be a better plan. Maybe there needs to be more patience. Now, one of the reasons why there might not be more patience is because these franchises need to make money ASAP, as soon as possible. So when you draft a quarterback in the first round, especially if it's, in the top 5 or thereabouts, that's a sexy pick. It looks sexy on paper. That's something that's fun to sell. It's a quarterback league. It's a quarterback league. You hear that all the time. So now you get to sell to your fan base, who's probably thirsty for some wins. If your franchise picked high in the draft, it's presumably because they had a poor season the year prior. So it's fun to sell a quarterback. It's fun to announce, yes, our shiny new gunslinger is QB1. It's a cool headline. I'll admit, it's a cool headline. I remember, because I had to write about it, I remember reading that headline that Bryce Young was, ordained as the starter in Carolina. This would have been, 13 months ago in August of 2023. I remember that day. I had to write an article. And, look where we are now. There are people suggesting Bryce Young has played his last down in Carolina. I'm not going to go that far. I think I wouldn't have a problem if Bryce Young hardly plays again this season. Not, you don't shut him down. He's not injured or anything, but I wouldn't have a problem if his play was limited going forward. It's a bad franchise. Not that I personally have anything against the Panthers. I'm neither here nor there with respect to them. They're just one of 32 franchises in the National Football League. But as far as how they operate and their prep work and their coaching selections last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it's just not a very good franchise. What do they do now? It's a fascinating question. I kind of feel sorry for Bryce Young, despite the fact that even I think he is doing some things wrong. I genuinely do think he's doing some things wrong. I do kind of feel bad for him because now he's just, it's another Zach Wilson. It's another Sam Darnold. Although Sam Darnold is having a bit of a renaissance these days in Minnesota, but it's kind of another Zach Wilson. Come on, can we not figure this out? Can we not be a little bit more patient? And it's not just anybody saying that. Tom Brady, of all people, said that. I would think out of all the quarterbacks who ever stepped onto the gridiron to play games in the National Football League, if Tom Brady has an opinion on something, especially if it's not exclusively positive, you might want to listen. There you have it. That was another episode of the Win is a Win podcast. I have been your host, Edwin Sheku. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I thought this was an interesting topic, a little bit ad hoc, but sometimes those are the better episodes, where you just spur of the moment. What am I going to talk about? Hey, that was an interesting article. Let's do it. Hopefully you like this one. Well, good luck to Bryce Young. I genuinely hope he has a good career and he's successful, but God knows how that's going to happen with the current, I shouldn't say with the Panthers, but with the current state of the Carolina Panthers. So, it's been fun. We'll talk to you soon, very shortly, on the next episode. Take care, guys. Ciao.